The Senior Citizens League, which I've referred to many, many times over the last several years here, they are a very prominent advocacy group for seniors, Social Security beneficiaries, and again, great group. I really like what they're doing there, and very consistent with what we talk about right here on the channel as well. But anyway, they came out with their estimate. Based on that inflation data, they came out with an estimate going into the following year, obviously 2027. It's a very long time away, and I'll elaborate here in just a minute why we want to watch this data, even though 2027 is a very long time away from it now. But they're projecting a COLA of about 2.5%, as you can see here in this article. Now, what's interesting is I was out maybe 2 weeks ago, give or take a little bit. I don't remember exactly. It could have been a week and a half, could have been 2 weeks, could have been 2.5 weeks ago. I was around right after the report came out in the middle of January, and I said, hey, we kind of lucked out here. We really kind of lucked out here. And again, don't get me wrong. Getting a 2.8% COLA is not lucking out whatsoever. I totally recognize that, right? But I said in that video is that if they were taking the inflation data right now and using that to determine how much of a raise we'd be getting, we'd actually be looking at probably about a 2.4 to 2.5% COLA right now in early 2026 if they were using this data right now. But instead, they use the third quarter data, July, August, and September. They compare it over the previous year, and then whatever the difference in inflation is the COLA for the following year. Okay, that's basically the formula explained very, very simply. So since inflation and price increases were actually higher over the summer of 2025, we actually lucked out a little bit by getting a 2.8% COLA versus what we would be getting right now if they were using this data at the moment of about 2.4 to 2.5%. Okay, so we maybe got about a 0.3% more of an increase on our monthly benefit than what we otherwise could have gotten. And again, that doesn't translate into a whole lot. But here's why we want to watch this, okay? And again, I know some of you might be shaking your head thinking, like, seriously, why are you talking about this? This is, projecting to 2027. That's so far away. It's still January of 2026 right now as I film this video. True, it is. But here's why it matters. Remember, for the reason that I just said, they use the inflation data for the third quarter, July, August, and September. Now, to be fair, July, August, and September, although it feels like is a long time away from right now, it's actually not that far away, right? It's going to be here before we know it. But the other important part about that is that as we lead into these months, the third quarter of the year, basically the summer, right? When we lead into these months, we want to continue to watch the trajectory. I've said this many times over the years. We want to watch the trajectory of inflation. In other words, the direction, the trend, the rate at which it's moving. Is it moving up higher, faster? Is it moving down lower and slower? Is it just grinding along at the same rate? What is it doing, right? That's why we want to watch the trajectory of this inflation. Well, over the last handful of months here, according to the reports out of the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, or some people just call it the BS department, and the CPI, or some people call it the CPLI, the inflation numbers. But the number that we want to watch is that the CPIW, right? The Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, that's the official data that they use to determine the raise for us and our monthly benefit for the upcoming year and the COLA. Anyway, here's what many people are saying, okay? We have all this talk about tariffs still. Even recently, all this talk, more tariffs coming on, more tariffs going off, the Supreme Court ruling, all of this business, right? But the point is that many people continue to say that many of the inflationary effects because of the tariffs that came on in 2025 are still yet to be seen. Okay, if that is actually reported accurately, and if it is actually reported honestly in the CPI data, as in the inflation data that's released by BLS, we would likely see that inflation coming in sometime early on here in 2026, which could potentially jack up inflation through the mid portion of 2026, right here, right now, right? Well, what would that mean for the potential raise to our benefits for the upcoming year? Well, if we do see a jacking of inflation over the course of 2026 and into the middle of the year, that may mean, even though the projections are coming in right now at just a 2.5% COLA, we may actually be looking at significantly higher than that if we really do see these massive spikes in price and the cost of living and inflation due to the tariff costs and the rollback into prices for us, the consumers, and if that's actually reported and reflected in prices for consumers, again in the CPI report, the Consumer Price Index report, then we may see significantly higher projections on the COLA for the upcoming year. Okay, so there's many people. The point that I want to make on this is that there's many people. It's not just me, but there's many people out there suggesting we're likely going to see significantly higher inflation. Well,